Laura. The ruble has fallen to a record low against both the dollar and the euro. It took a dive even as the Russian central bank raised its interest rates unexpectedly to shore up the economy. At the same time, Russian stock markets closed with their biggest daily drop in 5 years. The MICEX in Moscow closed almost 11% down. Western European shares also took a hit, with the brewer Carlsberg among the hardest hit. The Danish company has a big presence in Russia and is the country's biggest brewer, but Carlsberg was far from alone among European companies to fall back. French bank Société Générale also has a strong presence in Russia, and its shares closed to 5.3% lower on the session. Germany's Commerzbank, Finnish tire maker Nokia and Rencat are other companies with a Russian presence, and their shares too took a beating on Monday. Let's take a look then at the broader picture at the close of the European stock markets. The DAX in Frankfurt was the hardest hit among the main indices in Europe. It was down more than 3% at the close. The CAC 40 down 2.6% and the FTSE 100 down 1.5%. Make note of the MICEX over there in the corner. It lost 10.8% on Monday. In the United States, we're also seeing a sell-off on concerns over the crisis in the Ukraine. It comes even as U.S. manufacturing activity picked up in February, according to the closely watched ISM index. This hour, we're seeing the Dow Jones Industrial Average down by 1%. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 also negative territory, looking a little bit better for those two indices. Still, though, a pretty sharp sell-off there. Now, oil and gas prices have been heading higher on the back of the Russian intervention in Crimea. There are concerns that the crisis could disrupt oil and gas flows. Russia is a major European energy supplier, and Joe Tandy takes a closer look now at that relationship.
Providing around a third of demand, Russia is Europe's biggest gas supplier. Almost $100 million worth flow into the continent every day. After Russia cut gas supplies to Ukraine 5 years ago, many European Union countries sought to reduce their reliance on Moscow. France now sources only 15% of its gas from Russia, Germany 43%. Yet major gas consumers like Bulgaria, Slovakia and the Baltic states remain totally dependent on Russian supplies. And while sales of oil and gas count for around half of Russia's total budget revenue, analysts say that Europe would come out the loser in any economic showdown with Moscow.
When it comes to a battle of wills and who could last the longest, I think the member states, the likes of Germany, France, would come into troubles long before the Russians would be in a place where they'd have to change their stance.
Russia is also among the world's biggest oil producers, with most of the country's 5 million barrels per day destined for Europe. According to experts, economic sanctions against Moscow would force up energy prices worldwide.
Let's take a look now at a few other stories that we're following for you here in business. Manufacturing in the 18 countries that use the euro slowed somewhat in February. Research firm Market says its closely watched Purchasing Managers Index for the manufacturing sector came in at 53.2. That's less than in January, but it's still above 50, which signals that the sector is growing. Now, the picture is gloomier among manufacturers in China. Activity in the Chinese manufacturing sector is contracting, according to the bank HSBC and its Purchasing Managers Index in China. For February, the reading fell to 48.5 from 49.5 in January. A reading below 50 signals a contraction, and it signals that China's economy is slowing. And Apple is making a play for car buyers. It's unveiled a new car infotainment system, partnering up with Mercedes, Volvo and Ferrari. Those car makers will be installing the system called CarPlay in their new vehicles. It enables drivers to make phone calls, navigate, play music and send messages by using voice commands. The initiative was unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show, which starts this week. Okay, that is the business news for now. I'll be back again in an hour's time with more business headlines, Laura.
Good stuff, Marcus. We look forward to that. Thanks very much. Dan Levy is with us in the meantime.